At the railway station, a man named Norman had already found his train, but he was struggling to locate his compartment. Just then, a young woman called out from behind, shouting, "Dad," but it turned out to be a misunderstanding. She quickly apologized, clearly embarrassed. The girl was young and remarkably attractive, while Norman was in his early 60s. Coincidentally, both were heading to the same city on the same train. Out of courtesy, the girl offered to help Norman find his seat, but he politely declined. Norman wasn't the type to trust strangers easily. As the whistle blew and the train prepared to leave, the girl once again tried to lend him a hand. This time, in her rush, she accidentally bumped into Norman, causing him slight discomfort. Norman preferred traveling in peace, so he had reserved a private cabin for himself. A little while later, the train entered a dark tunnel, and everything momentarily went black. During that moment, someone stepped into Norman's cabin, placing down their luggage. When the lights flickered back on, Norman realized it was the same girl he had met at the station. Her name was Sophia, a beautiful, cheerful young woman. When Norman asked why she was there, she explained that several men had mistakenly come to her cabin earlier, so she came here instead to avoid the confusion. Norman wasn't exactly thrilled about her sudden arrival. To him, Sophia seemed a bit too carefree and outspoken. Meanwhile, Sophia thought Norman was being grumpy simply because he was older and couldn't understand her lively nature. At first, they exchanged a few sharp words, but soon their conversation softened. Sophia introduced herself, saying she was a nurse who loved helping others. Norman eventually shared that he was a retired railway engineer, and this sparked her interest. As Norman began telling her stories from his working days, Sophia listened intently, leaning closer. His calm tone and kind nature drew her in. Norman was traveling to attend an important business meeting in another city, while Sophia was going there to meet her fiancé. Their conversation made the long journey pass quickly. Before they knew it, the train had reached its destination. Norman, being a courteous gentleman, helped Sophia with her luggage. They decided to share a taxi since their destinations were nearby. During the ride, Sophia mentioned that she planned to meet her fiancé to discuss their upcoming wedding. After a short drive, Sophia dropped Norman off and continued on her way. Norman arrived at his meeting right on time. To his surprise, Sophia appeared there a little later. Her beauty caught everyone's attention the moment she entered. She told Norman that her fiancé couldn't make it that day and would be arriving the next morning, so she decided to wait in town. After the meeting, Norman headed to his hotel, but there was a problem with his booking, leaving him without a room. Seeing his concern, Sophia stepped in once more and invited him to stay at her hotel instead. However, upon arrival, they discovered that the hotel was fully booked. Norman looked worried again. That's when Sophia suggested that he stay in her room for the night. Norman hesitated. After all, she was much younger and practically a stranger, but with no other choice and Sophia's insistence, he reluctantly agreed. Before heading to the room, they had dinner together, sharing more stories and laughter. The atmosphere grew relaxed and friendly. When they entered the room, they realized there was only one bed available. Both decided to share it respectfully. Norman felt uneasy about it, given his age and sense of propriety, but Sophia lightheartedly joked to ease the tension. After some lighthearted conversation, Sophia soon fell asleep. Norman, however, found it difficult to rest. He tried to keep his mind calm and composed, reminding himself to be respectful. Eventually, he managed to fall asleep. The next morning, while Norman was quietly having breakfast, John, Sophia's fiancé, suddenly arrived. Sophia was still getting ready in the bathroom when John saw Norman in the room. Misunderstanding the situation, John grew upset. Norman tried to explain that it was all innocent, but John refused to listen. Feeling uncomfortable, Norman gathered his belongings and left the room to avoid conflict. After Norman's departure, John started speaking harshly to Sophia, ignoring her attempts to explain what had really happened. Sophia started arguing with John, and the tension between them quickly escalated. Her words made John even more furious. Meanwhile, Norman was standing just outside the door, quietly listening to their heated exchange. After hearing Sophia's tone and the things she said, Norman began to see her as a bold and unpredictable girl, maybe even a little dangerous. Without making a sound, he decided to leave. But deep down, Sophia just wanted to live life on her own terms, free and unrestrained. A few days later, Norman returned to his city. The first thing he wanted was to see his wife, Maria. He was eager to share everything that had happened, especially his encounters with Sophia. However, Maria didn't have much time for him. She was a social worker, constantly occupied with community projects and people in need. Her life was always in motion. Later that evening, when Maria finally had a break, she joined Norman for dinner. As they ate together, Norman began telling her everything about Sophia, her behavior, her words, and how strange the situation had become. Maria, being a very perceptive and wise woman, listened to him attentively, and to Norman's surprise, Maria didn't react with jealousy or anger. Instead, she laughed a little and teased him playfully, almost like Sophia had done. Norman had expected her to be upset, but Maria's calmness and trust said otherwise. Their bond was built on such strong love and understanding that Maria knew Norman could never truly betray her. She trusted him completely. One evening, while they were hosting a small get-together at their home, Norman received an unexpected call. The caller was Sophia. She was standing right outside his house. Norman didn't want to talk to her at first, but Maria encouraged him to at least hear what she had to say. Reluctantly, he picked up the phone. Sophia told him she wanted to see him face to face. Norman refused, but Maria, being her usual kind self, told him to go meet her and clear things up properly. The next day, Norman met Sophia. She looked different, vulnerable, and emotional. She told him that she and John had broken up, and that she was now completely alone. She confessed that she wanted to spend time with Norman because he made her feel safe and understood. Norman gently told her that she should be with someone her own age, not with an older man like him. But Sophia was firm. She told him directly that she liked him and that being with him made her happy. Sophia was clearly developing feelings for him, and even though Norman tried to explain that he was married and that nothing romantic could happen between them, the night went on with unspoken emotions hanging in the air. Maria eventually invited both of them over for dinner. Just like everyone else, Maria was genuinely warm toward Sophia. She even thanked her for spending time with Norman, since Maria's work often kept her away. Sophia then asked Maria if she could take Norman out for a meal the next day, and Maria kindly agreed. The following day, Norman met Sophia at a hotel restaurant. But to his surprise, Sophia had also brought her parents. She introduced Norman to them with great enthusiasm. Sophia's parents were cheerful, open-minded people, very much like her. During the meal, Sophia casually introduced Norman as someone very special to her, even calling him her partner. Her parents laughed and began discussing a possible engagement, treating it as if it were a normal thing. Norman was completely taken aback. He couldn't understand how her parents could be so casual about their young daughter being involved with a much older man. He smiled politely, but deep down he was confused and troubled. Feeling uneasy, Norman excused himself and left early. When he reached home, he told Maria everything that had happened. Maria could see how disturbed he was. She realized that Norman had unknowingly grown attached to Sophia. Norman wanted to reconnect with Maria, to spend time with her again, but her schedule left her with almost no free time. Understanding his loneliness, Maria gently told him that if being around Sophia made him happy, he should not hold back from it. She only wanted him to find peace and joy again. Days passed, and soon Norman and Sophia began spending more time together. They went out during the day, shared long talks, laughed, and enjoyed each other's company. One afternoon, Sophia took Norman to a dance studio. While dancing together, she playfully came closer, and Norman found himself enjoying the moment more than he expected. It had been years since he'd felt that kind of excitement and joy. Sophia made him laugh, and Norman couldn't help but praise her for her spirit and energy. Their bond grew deeper with each passing day. Wherever Sophia went, she made sure Norman was by her side. And seeing Norman so happy again, Maria too felt content, believing her husband had finally found lightness in his heart. But one day, everything changed. When Norman arrived at a hotel to meet Sophia, he saw something that shattered him completely. Sophia was getting married, not to John, but to John's father. Her new husband was wealthy, adventurous, and loved traveling the world. Norman realized that Sophia's attachment to him was never about love. She was just seeking something new and thrilling in her life. Heartbroken, Norman returned home in silence. Maria tried her best to comfort him, but his spirit was broken. He understood now that Sophia was never truly in love with him. She had only been searching for experiences, for emotions that made her feel alive, and Norman had been one of those fleeting moments. Still, as the days went by, Norman began to feel grateful instead of bitter. He realized that Sophia, despite everything, had reminded him how to live again, how to laugh, and how to feel joy. And so, with a quiet smile, Norman accepted it all. Even though their connection was temporary, it had changed his life forever. And with that thought, their story gently comes to an end.